Story 1. Deflection. While people are commenting on this fiasco, they are not saying former President Donald Trump is in the Jeffrey Epstein files. Release the Epstein files. Edited to add the unredacted, unedited, untampered with files. Story 2. Canadian, so I don't really have a say, but remember how they cut a bunch of programs like social services, health science, and more due to wasted government spending? But somehow this was okay? Story 3. Remember how everyone used to flip out when Barack Obama played golf or took a vacation? The political right said it cost too much for the United States Secret Service to accompany his family. Do you miss him yet? Story 4. It is surprising that a $200 million ballroom is being considered while many basic needs are deteriorating. If it involves public funds, it should be rejected. If it is private funding, it should be built elsewhere. Story 5. I'm tired. Every day, things go further off the rails. The only thing that keeps me going is the hope that an adult will step up and say, "That's enough," and things will go back to normal. How can one group of people damage a country so quickly while the rest just stand around and say, "They can't do that," with their hands in their pockets? Story 6. Yuck. It's really sad. It is a monstrosity that symbolizes the death of democracy. It represents millions of people losing their healthcare and dying as a testament to his ego. It's just ugly. The ballroom overshadows the actual White House. It is gaudy and gross, and it seems to be a sign of a dictatorship, not a legitimate president. I really hope it is stopped. Protests only work so far. He is harming our home. Story 7. I don't really have a say in this as I am Australian, but this is a huge waste of money and is nothing more than a poor attempt to deflect from Epstein. Having said that, I also think the White House should be treated as a national monument, and aside from some minor personalization for the Oval Office and personal spaces, it should be treated as such outside of the control of the President of the United States. The addition of all the gold leaf that he has put on everything was just garish and ridiculous. Story 8. This is a question that should be asked of every Donald Trump voter who has experienced a flood, hurricane, or tornado and is now being told there is no federal emergency management agency funding for them. While you are at it, ask the Donald Trump voters who will be removed from Medicaid and the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Apparently, we have $200 million for a ballroom, but children can go hungry. On the other hand, this is exactly the kind of hardship that some people need in their lives to hopefully show them the error of their ways. Yes, that will be difficult when the echo chamber they live in tells them otherwise. But that is why it is our duty to remind them every chance we get. Story 9. At this point, I know I cannot do anything about it. I guess I am at the point where I just shrug. Seriously, there is mostly nothing regular people can do. I am a nurse practitioner for the geriatric population, and it is hard to accept that they are going to be affected the most. But then again, what can I really do about it? I voted for the other side. Honestly, the other day I saw one of my patients wearing a wristband supporting Donald Trump for 2025, so maybe many of them voted for him. What can you do? Story 10. Cannot help poor people. Cannot fund education. Cannot provide assistance to people, towns, and cities after a disaster. But we can somehow afford to make wealthy people richer, retrofit an unnecessary 747 airplane, and build a giant ballroom that no one asked for or needs. Story 11. He is definitely not planning on moving out. We are also talking about this and not Jeffrey Epstein or the fact that he is firing civil servants for reporting numbers he does not like. Story 12. It seems like waste, fraud, or abuse. Probably waste. If you want to go dance in a big ballroom, rent one for a night. I bet you spend less than $200 million total after every rental once you leave office. Story 13. When the Trump crime family moves out, if they ever do, we should bulldoze the place and hold a mass exorcism. Story 14. He is only building it because someone said he does not have courage and he wanted to prove them wrong. Jokes aside, I think it is a huge insult to all the federal employees who were laid off in the name of reducing costs, and to all the citizens who are struggling to make ends meet. Even in the incredibly unlikely possibility that it is not being paid for by taxpayer funds, it is still very insensitive considering the economic hardships the average American is going through right now, made worse by tariffs being placed on most things they buy. And if it is not paid for by taxes, who is paying for it? Certainly not Donald Trump himself. He is notorious for not paying for things. The money must have come from someone wealthy in exchange for something. It would be really interesting to see a full forensic accountant's investigation into the Trump administration. Story 15. Spending $200 million on a ballroom and more on an unnecessary renovation of the Rose Garden, while cutting funding for Medicaid and veteran services is sickening. Story 16. Honestly, I just hope they finally have enough space to teach politicians how to properly maneuver around questions. Story 17. After the Department of Guardianship and Emergency Response cuts to social programs, you would think wasting $200 million on a ballroom and over $1 billion on an airplane would create instant outrage. Well, not in this alternate universe. With Maxwell in the bag, Donald Trump and Project 25 are free to finish off the United States. Story 18. You are horrible. It is sad because he cannot enjoy time with his best friend doing what they love. Spending time with children. Story 19. I feel that if they can build it, then we can burn it down. It is a tradition, after all. No Medicaid means no ballroom. Story 20. I thought our country was broke and had no money. It is strange to be spending so much when we have such a worrisome debt. I guess those concerns only matter before an election and not when the Republican Party is in office. Story 21. It will be invoiced at $200 million to a close associate of Donald Trump. It will eventually be revealed to have actually cost $50,000 and appear as if it was sourced from a Dollar Tree store and then spray-painted gold. Story 22. I think it is evidence that he does not intend to leave office. He is treating the people's house as if it will never be returned to the people. We need a revolution or for him to die. Or both. Story 23. Every Republican in Congress should be voted out over this whole debacle. Not just the ballroom, but all of this nonsense. Donald Trump only has power because they allow it. They have all stood up to be counted with a tin pot fascist and betrayed their oaths to the people of this country. Most of the Democrats are just as bad because they will not fight back or they adhere to the old norms. It is absolutely embarrassing. Story 24. Good news is he is turning 80 and hopefully departs before he transforms this great country into a haven for the billionaire club. Story 25. It is one more data point in an extremely long list of examples that Donald Trump will always choose his own wealth, power, vanity, and ego over truth, kindness, or the benefit of anyone else. Story 26. Hundreds of millions in changes, all for a pedophile who was associated with Jeffrey Epstein, and who is supposed to be released in a couple of years. Story 27. A lot of good people lost their jobs so it could be built. Do not forget the ballroom is a distraction from the Epstein files, in which Donald Trump's name is not included, supposedly. Story 28. How about the $900 million to refurbish and secure the $400 million free plane from Qatar that is in the big beautiful bill? Story 29. I am so excited. It is not like we need that money anywhere else. The country, economy, job market, and everything else you can think of are all going superbly. Story 30. Major waste of money to feed a narcissistic ego. How often would it even be used? When the Democrats eventually take back control, they will remodel it again and spend another $200 million. How is he allowed to do this? Where is Congress? I guess they approve anything Donald Trump wants. Story 31. It is a waste of resources. People are losing access to medical care and hospitals are closing. Yet this person thinks spending money on a parade and ballroom is important. It shows that he cares about himself and not the people. Story 32. It is going to take more than 3 years to be finished. Does anyone else see it as a sure sign that Donald Trump is not ever stepping down? Story 33. I'm not sure if you've heard, but Donald Trump is accused of serious misconduct involving children. Story 34. Every congressperson should be voted out of office. Each one has failed the American people by not holding the president accountable. Story 35. Wasn't former President Donald Trump just complaining about new buildings being constructed at the Federal Reserve? Story 36. Anything to distract from traitor Donald Trump in the Jeffrey Epstein documents. trying to distract from moving Ghislaine Maxwell to a minimum security day camp by waiving her sex offender status so she will lie for Donald Trump. Story 37. $200 million for wealthy people to gather and play games. This is why he had to cut all that money for world aid programs. Yay, America! You're doing so well. $200 million. It's all going to be in marble and gold leaf. Gaudy as hell, just like Trump. And he claims it will be privately funded by himself and other donors. He has already admitted to earning nearly $500 million on his stock trades. But yes, it's all legitimately earned private funding. Story 38. Grotesque display, absolute waste of time and money, completely tone-deaf to everything people are dealing with now, and yet another pathetic attempt to distract from what is truly rotten in this administration. Story 39. I think this administration is acting like Marie Antoinette, and the public should treat them accordingly. Story 40. I feel like I do not have the Epstein files when I should have the Epstein files. Where are my Epstein files? Story 41. Here are all of the Epstein files that have either been leaked or released. Trump is on page 85, or PDF page 80. Trump's name is circled. The circled individuals are the ones involved in the trafficking ring according to the person who originally released the book. These people would be the list. Other Epstein information includes a court document alleging Epstein and Trump molesting a 13-year-old together. Some people think this claim is a hoax. Katie's testimony is available online. Additional Trump information includes Trump admitting to peeping on 14 to 15-year-old girls on the Howard Stern radio show. Trump promised his daughter Ivanka that he would never date a girl younger than her. Trump's modeling agency was allegedly part of Jeffrey Epstein's trafficking pipeline. Reminder: Trump confessed he was sexually attracted to Ivanka when she was 13 years old. Donald Trump called his own daughter a lewd name in comments threatening to derail his White House bid. Trump joked he and Ivanka have sex in common. Trump's lewd talk about daughter Ivanka in front of White House staff was recalled in a new book. According to the New Republic, aides said he talked about Ivanka Trump's breasts and backside, leading the former chief of staff to remind the president that Ivanka was his daughter. Stormy Daniels testified that Trump compared her to Ivanka. Trump said it's okay to call Ivanka a vulgar name. Trump said if Ivanka were not his daughter, perhaps he would be dating her. Trump said Ivanka has the best body, and that he created her. Trump asked if it is wrong to be more sexually attracted to one's own daughter than one's wife. Trump encouraged Ivanka to release a sex tape, and she was horrified. Trump made lewd comments about his 1-year-old daughter Tiffany's breasts and said she has Marla's legs. For nearly 2 decades, starting in the late 1980s, Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump were neighbors in Florida, traveled together, and socialized at Mar-a-Lago and Epstein's Manhattan mansion. MC² was the modeling agency Epstein, Jean-Luc Brunel, and others used to traffic girls into the United States on genius visas. The EB-1 visa, nicknamed the Einstein visa, is reserved for highly acclaimed individuals such as Pulitzer, Oscar, and Olympic winners, respected academic researchers, and multinational executives. Melania Trump, then Melania Naus, applied for and won this visa in 2001. While President Trump has dismissed his friendship with convicted sex offender Epstein, Epstein claimed he introduced Trump to his third wife, Melania. Reports say Epstein was not removed from Mar-a-Lago membership until October 2007. Well, after Trump claimed they disassociated and after Epstein's arrest and indictment became public. Do your part and spread this information so it remains public. Never forget. Story 42. I feel like $200 million can be spent helping the citizens who already gave that money to the government to pay for the social safety nets they keep taking away. People are losing Medicaid and food stamps, and this person is turning the people's house into his own castle. Story 43. Wasteful and distasteful ridiculousness. It also reeks of him not planning on going anywhere. All these renovations seem to be about getting as many people in for dollar grabs like hotel conference rooms, outdoor seating areas, and so on. Story 44. We paid for it, but we will never see the inside of it in person. I wonder if everyone is proud of themselves. Story 45. If you are middle or lower class and still think Donald Trump cares about you, you are truly a lost cause. Story 46. The individual refers to Mar-a-Lago as the White House, so it is unclear who this is intended for. Meanwhile, the individual is considered a child rapist until proven otherwise. Story 47. People making poor excuses saying, "It is private donations," are extremely dense and missing the point. Our president, this administration, does not care about anything important and is a waste of life. School safety, public safety, infrastructure, veterans, healthcare. Any other former president would be persecuted for the things Donald Trump does. He is such a sleazy salesman, and I cannot wait for him to disappear. Story 48. I just want to know how you can spend $200 million on one room. Is it going to be made of solid gold? Story 49. Nicolae Ceausescu, president of Romania, known for his cruelty and vulgarity, was eventually executed by citizens. The proposed gilded throne room appears to follow a trend. Story 50. I think it's a decent idea. I read about why it is being built, and it makes sense why he wants to do it. That being said, I do not trust Donald Trump to build something beautiful and classy. I suspect it will be gaudy, garish, and over the top in a distasteful way. I also do not like that private donations will help pay for this. There is too much room for influence and greed. But that is the man's entire personality, so it is not shocking. Story 51. If what I have heard on the news streaming is correct, it is private donor money funding most of the construction. Hopefully, it is a construction company that is responsible and reputable. But that is just to build it. It becomes public tax money to support it. Then the probability that it will be Trump gold makes me nauseous, but since I will never see the place, it does not seem to matter. Donald Trump likes to flit from one distraction to the next, driving good things for real people into the ground and making up fantastical things to make him sound important. From what I understand, the East Room was the entertainment and state dinner place and was getting too small, so this was a perfect opportunity for him to add on something tacky. He is really exasperating. He likes to hear himself talk, and because he is the president, people are expected to listen. Story 52. I am so excited. I honestly cannot even fathom how much better my life will be when it is finished. I do not want to get ahead of myself, but this seems like it could bring in the dawn of a true utopia. Story 53. I am sure it will be as tasteful as all the other improvements former President Donald Trump has made to the White House and worth removing all those hungry families from the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program to pay for it. Story 54. Just another distraction from Donald Trump being in the Epstein files. The most corrupt administration in United States history is Donald Trump's claim to fame. Story 55. I feel it is unnecessary, but it is great for the company that makes those plastic wall ornaments for Home Depot. Story 56. He is turning the White House into the next Gilded Age. It is sick and disgusting. I hate him with every ounce of my being. Spending money on the ballroom, his plane, his golf trips, while healthcare and public broadcasting are being cut, is just disgusting. This country could have been great for the people, but it has become greedy, ignorant, and selfish. I hate it here. Story 57. 200 million is a lot of money for a ballroom. I am an architect and we have built more than 25,000 square meters of office towers costing between 100 million and 200 million. Story 58. It will be the perfect place to celebrate martial law and using the military against your own citizens. Story 59. He is going to try to keep the White House. I know it sounds foolish, but I bet within 12 months he starts joking about why it should be his. Story 60. The funding will arrive. No ballroom will be built. Somehow, Donald Trump will pocket the money, and that is that. Story 61. At this point, we are being overwhelmed with the second Gilded Age comparisons to the extent that it has become literal. Story 62. I have to say $200 million for a ballroom, while small businesses are still recovering from the pandemic, feels pretty tone deaf. It is like when corporate chains receive bailouts, but we are fighting for scraps. I understand that state dinners are important for diplomacy, but that money could have gone toward infrastructure or helping Main Street businesses instead of fancy parties for politicians. Story 63. It will be an architectural white elephant. His penchant for gilding has already ruined the Oval Office. The next Democratic president will have to remove all that gaudy, cheap decoration. The ballroom will be used very sparingly and will also need a removal of the former president's influence. He reminds me of the difference between an artist and a house painter. An artist knows when to stop. Story 64. Now that Elon Musk is no longer in charge of the fraud, waste, and abuse program, they can now do whatever they want. Story 65. The rich deserve opulence when they rest. That is why supporters of Make America Great Again are happy to live in trailers so their betters can have a better life. Story 66. It is ironic that he is criticizing Powell for renovating an entire building complex, which cost much less per square foot than this ballroom. Also, this renovation is unnecessary and will likely be done in a style similar to former President Trump's, with tasteless gold decorations everywhere, which is distasteful. Meanwhile, the average American will be burdened with the cost. Story 67. It is Mar-a-Lago North. He wants more space to hold fundraisers for supporters, loyal followers, and admirers. Story 68. At least we know the Epstein files will be securely stored within the concrete foundation of this gaudy display. Also, these do not seem to be the actions of someone who will be moving out in a few years. Story 69. Juxtaposed with 17 million people losing their healthcare, I think they are corrupt and cruel. Story 70. That is a completely justifiable reason to halt pediatric cancer research. Why waste money when you can have a gold ballroom instead? Story 71. We are wasting our money to entertain one pathetic individual and damaging our entire country in the process. There is no other way to feel about it. Story 72. Stupid and pointless, especially after campaigning on wasteful spending for his entire campaign run. How does adding a ballroom to the White House affect the average American citizen in any way? He is treating the White House as if it is his personal property, like those gaudy bankrupted casinos and hotels. Story 73. I would guess that Trump is trying to recreate the Gilded Age before he eventually succumbs to his diet of hamburgers and taco bowls. He thinks that William McKinley was the greatest president because of tariffs and that the greatest time in United States history was the late 19th century when industrialists like Vanderbilt, Carnegie, and J.P. Morgan were dominant. He is wildly out of touch. I expect him to insist that the United States military resurrect the cavalry so that soldiers on horses can parade in Washington, D.C. Story 74. What a waste of money and time. People around the country are struggling to survive, and these people are building a ballroom to throw parties. Story 75. I thought we did not want needless expenditures. That is why he added Dogecoin, right? It is honestly pretty sad. Story 76. The only thing worse than Donald doing this is that his supporters will not consider it an issue at all or, at minimum, will dismiss it. What do I think? I am angry that it took the Jeffrey Epstein scandal to get people to even start to believe that Donald actually behaves in a way he keeps trying to hide. Story 77. It's not just going to be a ballroom. Mar-a-Lago is 62,500 square feet. This ballroom is apparently going to be 90,000 square feet. He wants a new, private presidential palace. Story 78. After he criticized Powell on cost overruns for his project, it seems a bit hypocritical. By the time the ballroom is done, it will be closer to $1 billion. Mark my words. Story 79. If I understand this correctly, they are going to destroy the East Wing's current setup, which means they will be eliminating officers for people who might be doing things, especially the First Lady. Story 80. As a citizen who has heard these individuals scream about the budget year after year, only to go wild every time they get into office, it makes me wonder when they will learn. Story 81. Why does one person need a ballroom at their private residence? If the United States needs a ballroom for various functions, there are plenty of federal buildings that can house a ballroom for multiple agencies. This is all to just appease an ego, one that has flaunted wealth all his life. Story 82. We can all complain about it on social media, but it will not change until we vote the Republican Party out of office one by one. Story 83. What do you mean? 1. It is obviously a huge waste of money. 2. This is Reddit. 99% of the comments will be negative, and you are just karma farming. This site has declined recently. Story 84. I think feeding children, taking care of our veterans, seniors, and public broadcasting service are more important than this waste. It will be gaudy, tacky, and unnecessary. Story 85. If I were a tax-paying American, I would be furious. It does not help that it all looks gaudy, hideous, and outdated. The man thinks he is a Middle Eastern prince or something similar. Story 86. I am glad we are doing this instead of funding childhood cancer research. Those children have been living comfortably for too long, unlike our poorly mistreated and disadvantaged elites who have no opportunity to enjoy themselves for 2 hours a year. Story 87. I feel that authoritarians love artifice and spectacle to appear larger, stronger, and more in control than they really are. Their followers embrace it, and their opponents see right through it. Donald Trump is one Perón is Nursultan Nazarbayev is Ferdinand Marcos is Nicolae Ceausescu is Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov is Louis XIV is Ozymandias. Story 88. Conservatives are the least informed voters in this country's history. Thank you for negatively impacting our collective future. They seem incapable of understanding. Story 89. It is a waste. What problem does it solve? Why spend all the money when you complain about the deficit? What value does it provide? Story 90. I am constantly confused and shocked at the way his supporters watch his open corruption and continue to support it. This is just one in a long list. They cheered on the slashing of government jobs, insisting that all of it is fraud, but then have no problem with this. Story 91. It is completely a scam by Donald Trump. He will take all this gold with him as he leaves or have someone else bring it to Russia when he changes his mind. It is a scheme to steal our tax money. Story 92. Just another distraction from the Epstein files. Have you seen him dance? 1 foot forward and back, move your arms somewhere, repeat. What does he need a ballroom for? Answer, a distraction. Story 93. $200 million to build a ballroom for a building that already has an event space that has been adequate for 50 years or more. Story 94. Supporters of the Make America Great Again movement refuse to acknowledge this flawed plan. They would have reacted violently and threatened another attack on the United States Capitol if President Joe Biden had announced any plans even 1/100th the cost and size of this. Story 95. Besides how foolish and wasteful it is, Donald Trump has the absolute worst taste in decor, and it will look cheap and over the top, just like his hair. Story 96. I am sure all of the cuts to the Department of Veterans Affairs and the many other jobs at federal agencies held by veterans are totally worth it to the deplorable traitorous Make America Great Again cultists. Story 97. I am here to remind everyone of a Fox News article that flew under the radar. They published it a week or two ago, discussing how the Biden administration approved $1.2 million to renovate 3 pools at embassies. Of course, many people in the comments section were very upset about it. Story 98. Not my country, first I have heard of it, but the first thing that popped into my head was Donald Trump doing a terrible job of singing AC/DC's Big Balls. And I always fill my ballroom. The event is never small. The social pages say I have got the biggest balls of all. Yes, that is pretty typical of Donald Trump now I think about it. There is even a bit about if your name is on the guest list. Obviously he would change that to the Epstein list. Story 99. President Tiny Hands wants to be considered royalty and needs a ballroom for all the parties presidents hold every weekend. Also, he and Epstein were involved. Story 100. A waste. Clearly, this post has some issues with the Kennedys. This tacky, ugly nonsense, plus the renaming of the Kennedy Center, is disappointing. Then hiring the black sheep who has been a disgrace to the family and makes them look bad. Donnie is jealous. Story 101. I feel humorous because it is what they all voted for. Who needs social programs when you could have a White House renovation? Story 102. They cut cancer research, education grants, general research, libraries, and public broadcasting service to save pennies, then spent $1 billion on a gold plane and a giant gold ballroom. They cut our Medicaid and Medicare to give money to artificial intelligence technology billionaires. I cannot say what I really think because Reddit keeps banning me. We need to work together to achieve this. Story 103. Well, I suppose it is not as bad as the $1 billion we are going to spend on upgrading former President Trump's new personal plane. Both because it is less money and because he cannot take it with him. It is still a massive waste of money for a man who thinks he is a king and the White House is Versailles. Story 104. Cutting Medicare and Medicaid. United States Agency for International Development funding because of waste, then builds a ballroom. Waste king himself. On top of that, a huge distraction from the Epstein list. Story 105. The rest of the building was hardly fancy enough to do more than house your secretary. This gives it more of a questionable atmosphere. Story 106. I think it will be a tasteless edifice dedicated to the most corrupt and inept president of the United States in our history. He has already destroyed the Rose Garden with a parking lot. The donors contributing to build it will be bribing him, as no doubt he is taking a skim from each donation. Story 107. Well, I feel like it is necessary. Donald Trump has crowded the White House with so many arrogant people, and each person typically has 2 testicles, so they are absolutely going to need more space. I say let him have his fancy room, but only after he releases the Epstein files. Story 108. Construction will outlive him and will not be ready until after his term ends. Then it will be demolished because it is not secured against security vulnerabilities. Story 109. Congress, the National Park Service, and the Historical Society should put a stop to this immediately. This destruction is unnecessary and will be used for non-essential purposes. Story 110. Are you saying that Donald Trump has announced the Epstein Memorial Ballroom to distract people from the fact that he will not release the Epstein files because they contain proof that he is a child rapist? Story 111. The president wants to distract us. He would rather be known as the Tango Tangerine, but history will always remember him as the president. Make America Great Again stands for molest and groom adolescents. The grand old party represents glorified old pedophiles. Story 112. What do I think about the president being a PDF file who sexually assaulted kids? Yes, I do think it's an outrage. It doesn't matter, though. The list doesn't exist, and if it did, Trump isn't on it. Well, maybe there's a list. I'm sure the Clintons are on it. Trump never met the guy. That picture of Trump and Epstein is fake. Fine, the picture is real, but they never knew each other. Those letters they wrote each other about abusing kids are fake. There's no list. The list is fake. Story 113. Aside from the Epstein files, Donald Trump has misappropriated close to $1 billion of government funds for White House projects and his airplane. Meanwhile, 17 million people are going to lose Medicaid, and public broadcasting service and national public radio have been defunded. Story 114. How much more does Donald Trump have to do to Americans before they realize how difficult their situation really is? All I see is anger online, but no protests in the real world. The media is silent. The Democrats are silent. People are just letting him do anything he wants without saying a single thing. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.